the role of an editor is to take all the footage that has been shot by the crew and put it together to tell the best story possible. When you're editing, all you're thinking about is character and story, because that's all that the audience thinks about when they watch the film. The audience cares about the characters and wants to find out what's going to happen to them. Everything else is secondary to that. So when I'm editing scenes, I'm just thinking about the characters and the story. After that, I'm thinking about making sure that the shots look nice, that they're in focus, that the wardrobe looks great, the lighting looks great, the makeup looks great, the sound is great, making sure that all the crew's best work ends up in the movie. But the most important thing is character and story. I started to realise that I might want to work in the film industry when I was about 7. And I remember very clearly watching Star Wars on TV for the first time. My parents never took me to the cinema, so I only ever watched films on television. And it came on in 1980 when I was about 7 or 8 years old. And my parents recorded it on a Betamax tape. And because it started at 9 o'clock, because the film started at 8 p.m. and ran till 10 p.m, and my bedtime was 9 p.m, I missed the second half of the film. But the next morning I got up at 4 o'clock in the morning and I snuck downstairs and I fast forwarded the tape to the right place and I watched the second half of the movie with the sound turned right down so I wouldn't wake my parents up. And then I remember at about like 5:30 in the morning when the film finished, seeing people's names going up at the end and thinking, people must do this. These are real people. They must work on a film. So I want to do this. And from that day on, I was a total film nut, and I read as much as I could about it, and I watched as many films as I could. And I thought initially that I might be a director, which is what everyone thinks when they're that age. But when I was about 17, I started thinking that maybe editing would be more appropriate for me. The story is a very familiar story, but it's set in a very unique world of this kind of restaurant business in Leicester, and a unique culture where you're getting a little glimpse into the kind of Indian culture in Leicester and how the families who live in this environment, relate to each other. But fundamentally, it's just a very simple, funny story which can appeal to a lot of people, and a lot of the best films are very simple stories, well told, and I think this one is one of those. We have very similar tastes, cinematically, and I really respect him as a writer and a director, and so to have that kind of healthy respect for each other's opinion means that we can be very creative and try a lot of things out and not take it personally and have fun while we're doing it and end up with a great film, I hope. When I watch the material that Amit has shot, I try to remain very independent from the emotion of the set, and I let the material speak for itself. And I will gather my own opinions about what the strengths and the weaknesses of what's been shot, what the strengths and the weaknesses are in the material that's been shot. And occasionally I'll get a feeling that something is not going to earn its place in the finished cut of the movie. But at this stage, generally, I will put everything in that Amit has shot. I feel it's respectful to the writer and the director, same guy, of the film, and it's important to give each scene a shot at earning its place in the film. But I do have my opinions about what will come out, and occasionally I will do another cut of a scene and just try something out, removing a couple of lines of dialogue where I feel that the rhythms of the scenes around it dictate that would be a good idea. Obviously, I could well be completely wrong, and a lot of times I am completely wrong, but you try things out, and the most important thing when you're editing is to leave no stone unturned in the quest for the best film. Try everything out, because the only people that are going to see it are sitting in this room. No one outside will ever see it. So it's important that you have given every moment in the film a chance to shine, and if it isn't shining, you give it your best shot to make it shine by looking through the footage and adjusting the timing and making the joke play or not. And then you can make a judgment about whether it deserves to be in the film or not. I try and edit with music a lot, especially later in the editing process. Generally what happens is for the first half of the shoot, I may start putting the scenes, I'll just be putting the scenes together as they are and maybe using the occasional bit of music, depending on what I think might work. Quite often I hear the music in my head, but I can't find music from another movie which I can use to build as a temp score. So I kind of hear the music in my head and I hunt through other film soundtracks that I've got to see if I can find something. But kind of later on, so in the second half of the shoot, when they've shot about half the film, I'll start to build the film as a whole in the computer, and I will start to feel where music needs to be present to act as a transition or to heighten some emotion in the film. And generally by the end of the shoot I'll have built the whole film with music where I think it should be. Even if it's not quite right, there'll be something there to give a sense of some piece of music helping this part of the story, if you understand.
Yeah.
So I think it's very important to try and use music as much as possible when you're editing. Our workflow, in simple terms, is this. The film leaves the camera, it goes to the laboratory, it gets developed, it gets put onto high definition videotapes, and it gets digitized onto our hard drives that we have in the editing suite. The sound comes straight from the set and goes straight in here. My assistant, using the sync clap at the top of each slate, will sync the sound and the picture together and prepare a little graphical window like this of all the shots for a particular scene, and that allows me to see what has been shot for each particular scene. Then what I tend to do is I will cut the scene together very quickly, not watching all the footage, but just having a look at maybe one wide shot and then starting to cut the scene, because I find it very useful to have gone through the process of cutting the scene before you watch all the footage for the scene. Some editors like to watch all the footage and then cut the scene, but I have recently, in the last couple of years, decided that it's more helpful to have had a pass looking at the scene, even if it's only 5 minutes, just quickly throwing the scene together, or half an hour or an hour if it's a very complex sequence. Then you can sit down and watch the footage, and then you know what you're looking for. And invariably you'll find little nuggets of gold that you need to make the scene really work when you watch all the footage after that. And then I will slowly build the film up on my own, and then when the film's finished shooting, I sit down with Amit, we work through the film for a few more weeks, then we show it to the producers, then they come in with their notes, and then a few weeks later we start showing it to small test audiences of 12, 15 people. We listen to what they say and we recut, and we show them again, and then we recut, and then we'll show it to kind of 100 people or 200 people. And every time we screen the film, we are very sensitive to what the audience is telling us about the pace and about the story and about whether they understand it or not. And every time we screen it, we want the jokes to play better and to get more laughs. And hopefully by the end of the process, we have a great film. It's very important to have the editor around during the filming process. And any experienced director or producer will probably agree with me. It's important to show the investors in the film how it's all coming along, and whether that's a film studio or whether that's an individual or whether that's a group of individuals, it's important that they can sort of start to see how the film is coming together. And it's important for the production to know that the story is working and that the characters are working. And if there's anything missing, I can tell them to shoot it. And they've still got the locations, or they've still got the sets, they've still got the actors. So it's a lot cheaper and easier to fix problems at this stage than it is, say, 6 months down the line when everyone else is, around the world working on different films. I challenge anyone, even somebody who has not been blessed with great luck in the love department with their girlfriends or boyfriends or wives or husbands or whoever it is, to not find the end of this film very romantic, and it will melt the hardest of hearts. And I think that's really hard to do, and Amit and the cast have really nailed it. So I highly recommend, if you think you might want to work in the film industry, watching lots of films, reading every book you can about it. Go and make one short film a week for a year, on your phone, and put it on YouTube, so you've got 50 films, and believe me, you will learn so much having done that process about storytelling and about what you need to shoot and about how to work with actors, how to use music, how to edit, how to light, how to do visual effects, because you can now do those pretty simply as well. And that'll be like a film school. That's all you need to know. And read books on screenplay writing, write lots of scripts, because it's really hard to write good scripts. There's tons and tons of resources online, totally for free. Filmmakers being interviewed, filmmakers giving talks about what they do. So, I question whether film school is worth the money, quite frankly. There are lots of editing platforms you can use to edit a film, and I choose to use Avid Media Composer. It's what I like to use. I find it incredibly robust in terms of the actual software. Very rarely crashes. It does a great job of keeping track of everything. I can work collaboratively with other editors and assistant editors on the same project, which is very hard to do on other systems. And it has been developed for professional purposes, and some software out there hasn't been developed for professional usage and can be fine for a short film, but when you are on a very big film with lots and lots of footage, you need to know that the software is keeping track of that and will, when you press play, it will play and it will be right, it will be in sync and it will work. And I can deliver on an Avid Media Composer timeline absolutely world-class work to the producers of the film or a film studio. Working with material that's been lit by Roger Pratt and his team is an enormous pleasure. When you have somebody like Roger lighting the film, he brings with him the best crew, the best gaffers, the best focus pullers, the best grips, and you end up with just fantastic looking material. It means you're not ever worried that the stuff isn't going to be great. And on some films with less experienced crews, you find yourself having to cut around shots that are out of focus or cut around shots that are badly lit, and that's just never the case when you're working with somebody who has the legendary experience that Roger Pratt has. It's a true privilege to work with someone like that.